Captain, warp signatures detected.
Contact Starfleet Command. We have engaged the Klingons.
On today's episode, sci-fi shows are getting a big boost this fall.
We need protection.
Protection from what?
The krill.
We have figured out a way to manipulate the speed of events.
So, it's an anti-banana ray.
It's really interesting.
We need no longer fear the banana.
Does it work on all fruit?
What about salads?
But will a parody outdo its own inspiration?
Used as a weapon.
That's why you're here.
You will soon find out.
Then I review the latest film in the DCEU. Has DC finally made a hit? And if you've ever wanted to make a dramatic entrance, these guys know how to do it in this week's Movie-ism. All this and much more in this episode of EMoney's Reviews. Show today. We've got sci-fi, we've got superheroes, we've got crossovers. I love a good crossover. I'll have my review of Wonder Woman coming up, but first, let's get into some sci-fi news. Last month, we got our first real look at the new Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery. In it, we see Walking Dead star Sonequa Martin Green play Commander Burnham, a 1/4 Vulcan, I'm guessing, definitely some Vulcan blood in her, serving on board the Discovery under Captain Georgiou, played by Michelle Yeoh. Now, while I am excited about this new series, right off the bat, a few problems here. For one, it clearly states in the trailer that this show takes place 10 years before Kirk and the original Star Trek series. So let's forget for a moment that the Klingons look all wrong. I mean, how and when the Klingons change their appearance has been a point of debate for years among Star Trek fans. My big problem here is that 10 years before the original series, we have a woman serving as a captain on a Federation starship. Now, I am not saying that there shouldn't be women captains in Starfleet. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not sexist. All I am saying is that it has already been established that there were no women captains in Starfleet at this time. In the original series, in what was actually the final episode of the show, Dr. Lester is quoted as saying to Kirk,
"Your world of starship captains doesn't admit women. It isn't fair."
No, it isn't. You punished and tortured me because of it.
That's all I'm saying. If we're gonna do this show, let's try to keep continuity. But still, pretty excited. Star Trek Discovery premieres on CBS All Access this fall. Now on to another sci-fi show this fall. This one obviously a parody of the Star Trek franchise, The Orville by Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane. And although it is a parody, it looks like it's going to be a smart parody, combining the elements of working on board an exploratory starship with the humor of a workplace comedy and everyday relationships. But will The Orville outdo its own inspiration in Star Trek Discovery? Well, it looks like Fox is putting a lot of money behind The Orville, but so is CBS with Discovery. Although Discovery is only going to be available on CBS All Access, so that could hurt its viewership, while The Orville is going to be available on network television on Fox. Its biggest drawback, though, it's a sci-fi show on Fox. We all know how well that can go. But the people at Fox like Seth, that is, after Family Guy came back for the third time, so maybe it has a chance. So I'm going to break my own rule and watch a sci-fi show on Fox in its first season. I'm just going to try not to get too attached. The Orville premieres on Fox this fall. Now on to some superhero news. Last month we got our first look at the newest addition to the CW superhero lineup, Black Lightning. In the trailer, it looks like Black Lightning will take on much darker subject matters than its CW predecessors, battling street gangs and violence rather than a series of supervillains of the week. The show will feature Chris Williams as Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning, who tries to retire from his superhero youth, making a career as a high school principal. But when violence spins out of control at the hands of the 100 Street Gang, Jefferson must don the suit once again to protect his family and his community. And already it looks like Black Lightning will have some help when his daughters start to develop powers of their own. So will Black Lightning meet up with Green Arrow or the Flash in its first season? Well, for now it looks like he'll be keeping the heroics closer to home. Black Lightning is coming soon to the CW. Now on to some Marvel superhero news. Spider-Man star Tom Holland has been giving us some new details about Spider-Man's role in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War. In an interview with Yahoo Movies, Holland said, "When I did Civil War, I only worked with Chris and Robert very briefly. Everyone else was sort of like I was acting with a tennis ball or all this sort of stuff. I saw everyone, but I never got to work with them. For this now, I'm in a situation where I'm on set with all these guys doing scenes, fighting bad guys. It's been a real whirlwind. It's been a lot of fun." So judging by what he's saying here, it sounds like Spider-Man will be fighting the big baddies along with all the other heroes and not just doing damage control back on Earth. But for some Spider-Man action before Infinity War, Spider-Man Homecoming is out in theaters on July 7th. Now on to some comic book but not really superhero news. In a press release just last week, we were told that Frank Miller's Sin City is getting a reboot for television. The project is in its very early development stages right now, but we're told that the series will follow closely to the graphic novels with Glenn Mazzara as its showrunner. Mazzara's writing credits include The Shield, The Walking Dead, and The Omen. Now I was a big fan of the first Sin City film. The second one, but the first one I thought was one of the best comic book adaptations at the time, and it still holds up today. However, we're being told that the TV show will be a far departure from the films, introducing new characters and timelines in the Sin City universe. Now, I understand the shows need to be different from the films, but just because you want to be different, let's not eliminate all the great things from the first film that made it the masterpiece that it was. And in a final bit of entertainment news, it seems that after the big Invasion crossover event, the CW is gearing up for yet another crossover, this one involving Sam and Dean Winchester from Supernatural. But they won't be teaming up with the CW superheroes, much to our dismay. Instead, they will be meeting up with none other than Scooby-Doo. The CW announced that during the show's 13th season, Sam and Dean will be featured in an animated adventure to solve a mystery with Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, Velma, and Daphne. Right now, there's no word on just how Sam and Dean become animated or what mystery they'll be solving with the Scooby Gang. Will it be a real supernatural threat, or will it just be an old guy in a mask like classic Scooby? Well, hopefully the CW keeps all that under wraps so that we can all be surprised when the show airs. This episode will hopefully also answer one very important question we've all been wondering for well over a decade. Is Dean more of a Daphne guy or a Velma guy? Supernatural Season 13 premieres this fall. Okay, now moving on to this week's movie review, and this week I'm reviewing the latest film in the DC movie universe, Wonder Woman. Of course, we all saw Gal Gadot's show-stealing debut as Wonder Woman in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, but now she gets her very own movie. Now, there has been a lot of anticipation and, quite frankly, anxiety leading up to this film. DC has been struggling with its movie universe with the critically panned Suicide Squad and the, at best, mixed reviews of Batman vs. Superman. Plus, this is the first female-led superhero movie of the modern era, so DC had a lot riding on this one. Well, it seems their gamble paid off. Wonder Woman currently has a 93% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and is breaking box office records as the biggest opening weekend for a film by a female director. Now, personally, I love this film. Great origin story. Now, I remember when we saw the trailers, a lot of people were saying that it felt a lot like Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, I will say this. There are some slight similarities in the films. For example, when we're forming our group, I found myself saying in the theater, well, looks like we have our Howling Commandos. But believe me, this is its own movie. The trench scene in the film is possibly one of the best action scenes of any DC movie. That's how you do a bad walk. My only small complaint was maybe the ending scene. Throughout the film, it seems like Steve Trevor is having to humor Diana and her own naivete about the world. And at the end, or so we're led to believe, Diana will learn a harsh lesson about men's darkness. But then the end comes, and we find out Diana was right all along, and the entire reason that the Great War has been fought for so long is so simplistic in nature. And I just thought that the whole thing cheapened the struggle and nature of the war. But still, great movie, definitely the best film in the DCEU so far, and that is why I am giving it 3.5 popcorns out of 4. Now, on to this week's Movie-ism, and this is one I like to call, Now That's How You Make an Entrance! This is what happens in a movie when a character makes their entrance in dramatic and often badass fashion. For this Movie-ism, it could be the character's debut in the entire film, or just their entrance into the scene. And we've got some good ones here, so let's get started. For years, we'd seen Spider-Man off on his own adventures in the Tobey Maguire trilogy, and again in the Amazing Spider-Man films with Andrew Garfield. For a long time, most of us doubted if we'd ever see Spider-Man alongside other Marvel characters in the MCU. But when Disney and Marvel finally regained the rights to the webbed wall crawler, they made sure he would make his debut into the Marvel Universe in dramatic fashion in Captain America: Civil War.
All right, I've run out of patience. On to Ruse! Nice job, kid.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude!
Going toe-to-toe with the Winter Soldier, Falcon, and then finally Captain America himself, Disney and Marvel wanted us to know that Spider-Man had arrived. In an era just before the golden age of superhero movies, there was Blade. A lesser-known comic character at the time, the half-human, half-vampire that could walk in daylight, was a bit of a risk for Marvel and New Line Cinema. But the gamble paid off, and in this opening scene of the film, audiences saw that Blade was what the monsters feared. One of the best ways to make a dramatic entrance into a scene is with a killer soundtrack. Moviegoers had already seen Quicksilver showing off his speed and sense of humor in this scene from the earlier Days of Future Past. But filmmakers outdid themselves in this scene from X-Men Apocalypse. Quicksilver doesn't seem too worried about getting everyone out of the Xavier mansion after Cerebral's power core explodes, as he has time to play a few jokes on some of the students. Another example of having a killer soundtrack to your entrance, no one was sure just how big a part Wonder Woman would play leading up to Batman vs. Superman. Keep in mind that even Aquaman was featured in several of the posters, and we all saw just how big his part was.
Oh, shit.
But in the epic battle with Doomsday at Metropolis Harbor, Diana Prince made her debut as the Amazon warrior princess and stole the show. And finally, in 1978, audiences had not seen Superman on the big screen since Superman and the Mole Men starring George Reeves in 1951. So fans were excited to see the last son of Krypton in an all-new feature film in color with new Superman Christopher Reeve. In his first scene donning the red and blue, fans watched Superman take off like never before to save Lois in a falling helicopter from atop the Daily Planet building.
God, look up there.
What the hell is that?
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me. Who's got you?
In his debut as the Man of Steel, Christopher Reeve let audiences know that he was a Superman for a whole new generation. Now, almost 40 years and 6 movies later, this scene is still regarded as one of Superman's most iconic, if not his most iconic, on-screen moment. Well, that about does it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe to EMoney's Reviews on YouTube, and also like Frackin' Nerds on Facebook. A lot of great stuff on Frackin' Nerds, a lot of great podcasts and shows. You can watch the Frackin' Nerd Show, where they talk about a lot of the same stuff I do, nerd and geek culture, but with a cross-table discussion. Also, you've got the Simply Drunk Booze News, Controller Girls, and a lot of other great stuff at Frackin' Nerds. You can like them on Facebook and on Spreaker. I'm Eric EMoney Sievers. Go see Wonder Woman in theaters now, and I will see you next time. One to transport.